How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be doing my full player card review for the cards that came in the Winter Soldier Hero Pack, punctuated as usual by my top 5 list of what I think the most influential new cards will be from a power level perspective. So I don't necessarily do this video based off cards I think are the most fun or unique. I'm interested in trying to improve at this game as much as we can. And to do that, we'll break down kind of how efficient these cards are, what kind of decks they support, what kind of new archetypes they might make, and how powerful they are in those contexts. So we'll start here first with the cards that did not make my top 10, still going through every card in the pack. We'll touch on the reprints at the end in case you are a newer player getting access to some of these cards for the first time. But without further ado, let's talk about the cards. As always, feel free to let me know your thoughts, where you think I'm wrong, anything I'm not considering. I always appreciate having those kinds of discussions. So to start things off, first just let me say this is a very overall high power level pack. There's I had a kind of tricky time making my top 5, lots of cards that I kind of know exactly what deck they're going to go in, and I think they will be meaningful upgrades to those decks. But keeping it to a top 5 list, some have to stay out. So first card is Spoiling for a Fight. This is a 0-cost aggression event. Hero action, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play engaged with you, and ready your hero. So this is another in a line of minion engaging cards we've seen for some positive benefit. And if you were to just play this card straight up in a random aggression deck, it would be really, really bad. Readying your hero is very rarely enough to kill whatever minion comes out. Not to mention we're kind of at a 1 resource disadvantage from having played this card from hand. So just on face value, this card is really poor, but I do think it has a nice home in the really dedicated minion engaging, minion slayer decks, because even though the card alone maybe isn't the best value, if we're getting an extra counter on Hall of Heroes, we're getting an extra card draw with Bring It, we're getting an extra resource with Man on the Wall, we're Thor drawing cards, Valkyrie's trying to kill things, Winter Soldier removes threat from schemes for killing things. If we can piece enough of these together, then I think this can be an okay card. And I was pretty happy for it in my recent gameplay video with Winter Soldier. I played a couple copies of this, and I thought it was pretty nice. So don't go around just throwing this into any old aggression deck, but when you're really built around the Minion Slayer package, I think this is a decent role player. Angela, I think, is still the best card for this, but you can only play 1 copy of that. Looking for Trouble is good. I think it will definitely compete with that. You'll have to pick which one you'd rather have, but a solid card nonetheless. Next up, we've got Shield Sidearm. This is a 1-cost aggression upgrade. It's a weapon attached to a shield character, limit 1 per character, uses 3 ammo counters. As an interrupt, when attached character makes a basic attack, exhaust Shield Sidearm and remove 1 ammo counter from it, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So from a total value perspective, this is 2 ER for 3 damage, which is not particularly exciting. And not only that, but we have to wait 3 turns to get it. Like, I'd much rather just have like a 2 ER event that just dealt 3 damage. We can attach it to our hero, so that's if our hero has a shield trait, that's probably where it's going to go. It's a little bit worse on the ally. There's not really that many allies that are happy to make 3 basic attacks before using their last hit point to block, so it's a little weaker there. It is a weapon. There's a handful of aggression cards, we'll see one later in this pack, that ask you to exhaust weapons. So if we're really starving for those, that can be okay. I mean, none of these weapon exhausting cards are like S tier cards that it's just like we play every weapon we can possibly get for them. But that's what I might look to use it for, but especially as just straight up value for the card, not quite good enough, I don't think. And while we're on the subject of Shield Sidearm, let's talk next about Deathlock. This is a 3-cost aggression ally with 2 thwart, 2 consequential damage there, 1 attack with the normal 1 consequential damage, and 3 health. Cyborg and shield traits response after Deathlock enters play. Search your deck and discard pile for a copy of Shield Sidearm and attach it to him. So once we've got this Shield Sidearm attached, Deathlock does hit baseline efficiency for allies, which is attack twice for 2 damage, and then block with that last hit point. That's a fine exchange of resources. It's the kind of value that just makes allies an excellent card type overall, but it's also just kind of par for the course for allies. It's not a significant amount better. You get a little bit of, it's not 1 attack for 2 damage, it's 2 increments of 1 damage, so maybe it plays nicely with Ultron drones or tough statuses or something. But we've got so many good allies, don't think it's making a huge world of difference there. Maybe in this weapon exhausting strategy, it's an ally at a fair rate that puts a weapon into play. So honestly, there's some room for it there, I think. But right, we've got so many good allies. 2 thwart for 2 consequential damage, good fallback, but not an efficient use of an ally to do that. Okay, moving on, we've got Aggressive Stance. This is a 1-cost aggression upgrade, which is a preparation, max 1 per player. Hero response: after you engage a minion, discard this card, search your deck for an attack event, and add it to your hand. So you're strictly negative on resources here. It's 2 ER to put this in play. You get 1 card back when you trigger the response. So you're kind of down 1 card. So that attack had better be extremely useful in order to justify doing this. So in general, sure, there are attacks, especially identity-specific attacks, that have good rates. But if you kind of add an extra resource on top of it, likely the efficiency doesn't look as good as it does when you consider the card standalone. If we really, really care about having ways to damage minions, we can just play a higher density of attacks. We've got our allies, we've got our basic attack. I don't think we're in so desperate need of a card like this to be able to grab a way to kill a minion when a minion comes out. Usually in aggression, we're really just desperate for minions to come out. We've got so many ways to deal with them that might go to waste if we don't have a minion out. So I don't think this is filling a huge need for aggression. I will say in this pack and in some other ones, there are some really strong team-up attacks that actually could justify themselves being played even for 1 extra resource cost, like Aggressive Stance represents. So we'll touch on the 2 in this pack that we'll get to. Both, I think, qualify for that, and some stuff like Fastball Special with Wolverine and Colossus that might fit as well. So, and not a ton of value here for being a preparation. I don't think it plays super well, in particular with Black Widow or Nick Fury. So, not giving it tons of points there. And obviously, there's no tempo whatsoever, unless you're doing stuff like spoiling for a fight. You're spending these 2 resources, getting nothing immediately. So that's always a little bit worse than it sounds when you're considering playing it at high difficulty games. All right, next up, we've got the lone off aspect card in this pack. We've got 1 protection card, which is White Widow. This is a 4-cost protection ally with 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 3 health. She's a shield. She has the shield and spy traits. Response: after you resolve the ability of a preparation card you control, heal damage from White Widow equal to that card's printed resource cost. This is another one that was kind of on the edge for me. I think this is a solid card. I can easily see myself playing this in a Black Widow deck. A Winter Soldier deck has some really powerful preparations. Nick Fury probably just has enough preparations. This is a decent thwarting engine for protection. If we go off my baseline stats, she's got 2 thwart and 3 health, so I would expect her to cost 3 in order to meet that. So she costs 4, so that puts her in the hole a little bit, but if we even heal a single hit point from her, that gives her an extra thwart for 2, and that now puts us at baseline efficiency with, of course, room to grow from there. So, right, it's a high value, low tempo play. And really in protection nowadays, there's enough we can piece together threat removal over the course of a longer game. We can do some med team stuff. There's some 2 health or some 2 thwart, 3 thwart basic allies that we can heal up and sort of make a combo with first aid and med team. But this is, a bit more of a unique way to do that. So, right, you're spending a lot of resources just to thwart for 2 on the first turn. So that's really what I'm holding against this card. But by the time she's activated, 3, 4, 5 times, really it is great value. So I think I'll put her in some decks. Not an earth-shaking card for protection, I don't think, but a definite role player. So moving on, we've got a couple basic cards before I hit my top 5. Starting off with Shield Deputy. This is a 0 cost basic upgrade. Play only if your identity has the Shield trait attached to a friendly character. Attached character gets +1 hit point and gains the Shield trait. This is a fine card. I think I've historically just underrated these cards. We've seen the exact same card basically, but for Avengers, for X-Men, for X-Force, and for Guardians. And when you put this on an ally with a 2 thwart or 2 attack activation, this is just an efficient exchange of 1 resource into an extra 2 thwart or 2 attack of value, maybe even more depending on if that ally gets a little bit extra something like some signature allies do, or if it's like Snow Guard, you know, some 3 health, some 3 thwart or 3 attack ally. So it's a fair card. It could go on our identity as well. I mean, 1 resource for 1 hit point isn't a big deal, but we can play this, say we're in our alter ego side with a shield traded hero like Black Widow, and we want to keep the shield trait when we go to hero form. We can do this trick, very common. You'll see this for like X-Men, for example, with the honorary X-Men to stay X-Men while they're in alter ego form. And yeah, for whatever reason, I just don't play these too much, but I think I should be, because I love 0 cost cards. They're very easy to make an efficient turn out of. I think the main thing is like it is not really any tempo unless we've got an ally on their last hit point that we want to save for a block. It lets them activate this turn and then block in the next turn. Otherwise, our tempo is kicked out a few turns until the ally is on their last hit point before their last, I guess on their second to last hit point. So it's a fair card. Not a earth-shaking card by any means, but definitely one that I could see myself putting in some decks. The shield trait for a hero is not extremely relevant. Like, there's a lot of cards that care about playing other shield cards. There's pretty few cards that care about your identity actually being shield. So maybe team building exercise. Agents of Shield is this leadership support that gives you a nice ability if all your characters are shield. I didn't rate that card super highly when I did the Agents of Shield card review. But that's a reason you might want to keep the shield trait in your hero form. So that's something you can do with it. And next up, we've got the first of 2 of the team-up cards in this pack. And here we've got Super Soldiers. This is a 3 cost basic event, which is an attack, so you can go find it with that defensive aggressive stance. And it's a team-up of Captain America and Winter Soldier. As a hero action, deal 6 damage to an enemy. Give Captain America and Winter Soldier each a tough status card. So the value on this, is absolutely tremendous. 6 damage, like that's worth about 3 resources, and each tough status is worth about 2 resources. So, if we add that all up together, that's like 7 resources of value in this card, assuming we use those tough statuses to do blocks, and assuming we make the full use of that 6 damage, obviously. Where the team up cards always get tricky is like it's always harder to play them than you think it's going to be. Even if you've got these 2 heroes at the table, you've got to be in the right forms. And if you're playing as a hero and you have 1 copy of the ally in your deck, it's hard. You got to have that ally in play. That ally has to be, the card you want to play when you draw it, whenever that is during the game. So you kind of need these things to align in order to really pay off the team up card. Now, maybe a team up card this powerful makes you, even more likely to bend over backwards to make sure you get that ally in play. But all in all, like, it is pretty tricky to get these to line up. And lastly, I'm always torn on how I rank team up cards here, because they're not particularly influential to the card pool because it's only going to affect these 2 heroes. But this is one where I could see, in the case of either Captain America or Winter Soldier, playing this a decent amount, does kind of lock you into the aggression aspect because, Winter Soldier could play aggression or leadership to have access to a Captain America ally, but the leadership Captain American ally is not particularly good in Winter Soldier's deck. So, it's pretty restrictive just in the heroes and the aspects you can play. So, it's not going to influence too many decks, but yeah, I think it's a playable card for Captain America and Winter Soldier. So, moving on, we've got my top 5 list. So again, these are the top 5 cards from my perspective as what I see will be most influential from a power level perspective. So increasing the power level of individual decks, maybe making new decks, but all with the orientation of just trying to win more games, trying to win harder games. So at number 5, I've actually put the other team up card. This is Winter Widow Soldier Spy, a 2-cost basic event that is an attack, again, searchable by aggressive stance. Team up of Black Widow and Winter Soldier, and it's a hero action. Put a preparation upgrade from your discard pile into play. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. So again, just looking at the math, deal 4 damage to an enemy. That's worth about 2 resources. And then putting a preparation into play. Depends on the cost of that preparation. If it's a 2-cost preparation, that's like a 3 ER play. So that's like a 5 ER total card here. And Winter Soldier has a really strong 2-cost preparation. Black Widow has a few. Either of them can obviously play like rapid response. I guess defensive stance is another 2-cost preparation. That's not the best, but even getting like a 1-cost preparation would be 1 resource of value above expected for the cost, and getting a 0 cost would be even. So any one of those cases is totally fine. And the reason I put this in my top 5 over the Super Soldiers one is I really think this card just makes it into every deck with these 2 heroes. In the case of Black Widow, Winter Soldier, in both their cases, the other character is their signature ally. So in the case of Black Widow, Winter Soldier is her signature ally, and Winter Soldier might be the best card in her identity-specific set. I mean, it's very often a 0 or 1 cost 4 health ally with 2 thwart and 2 attack. I mean, that's just incredibly strong. Like that would be a fair rate at the printed cost of 4, and he gets reduced by 1 for each preparation you have. So tremendously valuable. So one, you're gonna play him, almost every time you see him, as long as it maybe not the first turn of the game. And he's got 4 health, so he actually sticks around a decent amount. So I think this is going to be a much more live card when you're playing Black Widow. And I should say this is in solo. Obviously, you can always play it when you're teamed up in a multiplayer game. And then in the case of Winter Soldier's signature ally is Black Widow. When she enters, you can return an attack event from your discard pile to your hand. So that gives you like an extra way to draw this extremely powerful card. And that's just a huge advantage to this here as well. So, and it's, again, because it's their signature ally, it's really aspect agnostic. I really just think I'm going to put this card into every Winter Soldier and Black Widow deck that I play. And realistically, I mean, that just makes this about as good as a team-up card as it can be. So I've still kind of chickened out and kept it at 5 because it does only affect those 2 heroes. But I think this is an auto-include for both of those heroes. At number 4 on my list, I've got Bambino. This is a 3-cost aggression upgrade that is a tech and a weapon attached to a shield character. While attached to an identity, this card gains restricted, uses 3 ammo counters. When attached character makes a basic attack, remove 1 ammo counter from here. This attack deals 3 additional damage and gains overkill. So this is extremely similar to Hand Cannon, which costs 1 less and does 1 fewer damage per each activation. The overall efficiency of Bambino is greater, so this is going to end up doing 9 damage for the cost of 4 ER. So remember, 2 is kind of my threshold where I'm intrigued by a card, and this is actually a little bit higher than that, like 2.25 damage per resource, and it's giving attacks overkill, so that damage never goes to waste. Depends on how much you consider damage to the villain to be waste. We've talked about that before, but you can always just like save it for minions if you want to. And there's several additional benefits here. Well, the main one is really that this is now the best non-identity specific weapon to grab off of lock and load. So lock and load is the player side scheme that costs 2 ER, comes in with 2 threat. When defeated, you get a weapon from your deck with 3 or less cost. So there's Godslayer is the only other 3 cost weapon that's not identity specific that we might think to get. It's an okay card. It's not particularly strong, but I think Bambino is definitely better. And especially compared to Hand Cannon, like I still think this is going to compete with Hand Cannon a little bit because I like Hand Cannon is a little cheaper. It's a bit more flexible. But if we're getting either one for free off of Lock and Load, then, I mean, Bambino is so much better. Now, it is restrictive. It can only attach to a shield character. So integrate that into your rankings however you want for how flexible that is. But there's a decent amount of shield characters. Ideally, it's right. There's a good number of 2 thwart shield heroes that have the shield trait on their hero form, so that the hero can thwart lock and load for 2 and still get Bambino. Or we can just engineer it so that we have the shield trait in our alter ego form for the heroes like Hawkeye or War Machine, and then have an ally thwart lock and load or something and attach Bambino. Recall that when something has an attached to restriction, it matters when it is put into play and looking to attach to something. It is not continuously checked. So if we attach it while we're a shield character, we flip to our other side, and we don't have the shield trait anymore, that's totally fine. Bambino will stay on us. But it's just an efficient weapon that does a lot of damage, comes in for free off of lock and load, which is a really efficient exchange. So I'm seeing myself putting Bambino in pretty much every shield character aggression deck that I can think of. All right, moving on to number 3. We've got Firepower. This is a 1-cost aggression event, which is an attack. As a hero action, exhaust up to 3 weapon upgrades you control. For each upgrade exhausted this way, choose an enemy and deal 3 damage to it. This attack gains ranged. Now this is a tricky one to evaluate. I'm kind of splitting the difference, putting here at the middle of my ranking at 3, because this is an extremely low floor, extremely high ceiling type of card. And I tend to favor those more often than not, because I'd rather build around something that I know is going to give me a really high payoff, even if it requires some setup, because until that happens, right, it's just a resource for another card. So that I always like the inherent floor of any card is elevated in Marvel Champions. So I really just like to look for these high ceilings, especially when that high ceiling is also related to tempo. So we've talked about in some of these previous videos where there's cards that I kind of like. They generate a lot of value, but it kind of takes a long time. And so I'm not necessarily consistent with myself on how I value upsides like this. But I think I'm going to try more to kind of make this distinction where when you get all of the value up front here, like that is more worth pursuing than when the value comes over an extended period of time. So again, let's actually talk about what this is getting. So if we have no weapon upgrades, that's when this card does nothing, right? If we have 1 weapon upgrade, this does 3 damage. Okay, now 2 ER for 3 damage is not, that alone is not like probably good enough to make it into some of our decks. 1.5 damage per resource. We talked about that with Shield Sidearm, just not the most exciting. But as soon as we get to 2, this is 6 damage for 2 ER, which is 3 damage per ER, and that is incredible, right? No disputing that. So even if the sort of medium floor is 2 ER for 3 damage, like I'll take that, maybe 50% of the time, when the other 50% of the time I'm getting 6 damage for 2 resources. And there's a world where we might get 3 weapons, but I mean, that's 9 damage. That's obviously insane, but maybe we don't plan around that. We've seen this category of card before where we want to exhaust weapons to get something. We have Fusillade, which is 2 cost to exhaust 1 weapon and get 5 damage. Mean Swing is 0 cost, exhaust a weapon to increase an attack by 3. So as always with these cards, we really want to look for weapons that ideally just don't need to exhaust to do their thing. There's honestly not too many player and basic ones, but there is a collection of heroes that do have these types of weapons. So Black Panther is a classic example. Some of his claw upgrades have the weapon trait and they never need to exhaust to do anything. Drax has his knives. These don't need to exhaust to do anything. Valkyrie's spear doesn't have to exhaust to do anything. So these are the ideal candidates. Next is stuff like hand cannon, where there's finite uses. So we maybe lose some tempo if we exhaust it to an effect like this, but we don't lose overall value. The worst is the weapons that give us a free use every turn, like say maybe Venom's multi-gun. If we're exhausting that to do 3 damage to an enemy, well, we could have just exhausted it by itself to do 2 damage. So be a little careful of that. Make sure you're kind of using this in a place where it gives you good value. And right, you just kind of have to understand that this is your late game card, like this is your closer, because it takes some setup to get those weapon upgrades into play. Really, I'd only really build around this when I can realistically get 2 of these weapon upgrades into play. That's why Drax is pretty interesting, because he comes with these two weapons. Anyone that can play like Energy Spear or Sidearm, these are the aspect and basic weapons that can exhaust without doing anything. So just a high upside card. One, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if I try this out and I'm like, man, it's just too much setup to really get there. But just off a read here, I think it's worth trying, and I think it's going to be pretty powerful. At number 2 on the list, I've got Captain America. This is a 4-cost aggression ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 health, shield and soldier traits, toughness, and response after Captain America enters play, ready a shield character. So if we start with baseline efficiency, for 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 health, we would expect a cost of 3. So Captain America is 1 above that, but then he comes in tough. So already that brings him from like 1 resource below baseline to 1 resource above, because I value the tough at about 2 resources, assuming we're using it to block a villain attack. And then this response, after Captain America enters, ready a shield character. So assuming we make use of that, so we're slightly restricted again to shield heroes, but assuming we make use of that, that's generally worth about 1 resource of value, letting us either thwart for 2 or attack for 2 again, maybe get a recover if our character has a shield trait and alter ego. And so with the toughness and assuming we get this response, Captain America is like 2 resources of value above my baseline. So that's just phenomenal value. Even if we use that tough to soak a consequential damage versus a villain attack, like that's still just a fair exchange that would put him, I would say, 1 resource above expected value with the response. So just incredible rate overall. Very close comparison here in the game already to War Machine. So War Machine's a basic ally with 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, and toughness, but doesn't have this response. The reason War Machine, that I don't play him a ton, and one thing that could hold Captain America back a bit is just the tempo. Right, we're investing a lot of resources for an ally who, especially if we want to block with them right away, we're not going to be activating with them. But because of this response ability to ready our hero, that does give us a little jolt of tempo, which might be all we need. We're also, at the end of the day, it is fine if we just activate with Steve right away when he comes in. Maybe not the most efficient use of the tough status that we could do, but like that could still be worth it from a tempo perspective. So nothing too crazy going on with Captain America, just all around solid value. Maybe you sacrifice a little bit of that for some tempo when he comes in, but just everything added up to here, extremely efficient package. So number 2 on my list is Captain America. And last on the list with the number 1 slot, I've got Man on the Wall. This is a 1-cost aggression upgrade. Play only if your identity has the soldier trait, And then as a hero action, exhaust man on the wall. Reduce the cost of the next card you play this phase by 1 for each minion engaged with you. So to start off, it can only be played by soldiers, so that does limit it somewhat. But this is just a crazy resource generator for these minion engaging archetypes. So soldiers, I don't have the exact list in front of me, but right, it's going to be Cable, Nick Fury, Captain Marvel, I think War Machine, Winter Soldier, obviously. I think Venom, yeah, Venom is maybe only in alter ego form. So, it's more than like 2 or 3, but, it's not obviously every hero. But it's just an incredible resource generator. I mean, a 1-cost resource generator in an aspect or basic is very extremely rare. Sometimes we'll get identity-specific resource generators like this. Now, it is conditional, right? It only reduces cost for each minion engaged with us. But because it comes in so cheaply, I mean, we don't need to necessarily get value out of it every single turn in order for it to still be worth it. Right? Say we have 1 minion in play most turns, like that's already just an incredible unconditional resource generator. Aside from the fact that we have to be in hero form. So honestly, really, that's kind of all there is to it. It's just it's got the massive upside of when you're engaged with maybe 2 or more minions. This is the kind of card that, like spoiling for a fight that we talked about earlier, you're stacking up all these additional resources, these additional rewards for being engaged with minions, your Bring It's, Hall of Heroes, Man on the Wall. These in conjunction with spoiling for a fight, Looking for Trouble, Angela, ends up turning into a pretty efficient package when we take it all together. One small shout out is is Venom, actually. So when Venom plays Face the Past, another critical minion engaging card, right? Face the Past actually gives him 4 minions, so now he can reduce the cost of something by 4. But just the floor is pretty acceptable, and the ceiling is insane. So aggression deck with a soldier character, kind of a no-brainer. For Man on the Wall, I've given it my number 1 spot of new cards from the Winter Soldier Hero Pack. So to wrap up, I'll just mention we got 2 reprints of cards in the Winter Soldier Pack. First up is 1x1. This is a 1-cost aggression event, which has a hero action, deal 2 damage to an enemy. If this attack defeats that enemy, deal 2 damage to an enemy. So this is a fine card, right? If we don't trigger that rider of defeating an enemy, it's fairly inefficient. It's only 1 damage per resource. But if we do kill something and attack something else, then it is 2 damage per resource. So pretty efficient. Good thing to try to find opportunities to use this for. And then because of the way it's worded, it works really well with the effects like Winter Soldier's Arm or Warrior Skill, cards that increase the damage dealt by an attack by 1. Because this has 2 instances of damage, those kinds of effects will increase both instances by 1, which can be a pretty efficient exchange. So solid card, especially in this minion spawning archetype we've been talking about, because as long as you've got a minion to kill, right, you can kill it and then get the extra value. And the only other reprint here is Nick Fury Sr., who just came out in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so somewhat surprising to see a reprint so soon, but it's kind of like Nick Fury, the original Nick Fury. We got tons of reprints because realistically, you can have a 4-player game where everybody has Nick Fury because he only stays in play for 1 round. So Nick Fury Sr., maybe they're going for a similar kind of thing. But he's just a very solid, staple level, basic ally, right? 4 cost, 2 attack, 2 thwart, 3 health. After he enters play, you choose one of these 3 abilities, remove 3 threat from a scheme, draw 2 cards, or give a shield character a tough status card. At the end of the round, if he's still in play, discard him. So he's another temporary ally, for lack of a better word. But he perfectly buys back his resource costs, right? Say we draw 2 cards, attack, and then block, which is worth 2 resources. That's like 5 resources of value. He costs 5 resources. It's all front-loaded, like we don't have to wait a few turns like we often do with allies. So the only thing you can really say against Nick Fury Sr. is that he's not quite as good as original Nick Fury, but there's absolutely no reason you can't just play both. And of course, ally slots are very contested, so you're not necessarily wrong to not include him in lots of decks. But overall, solid card. Like they'll never be sad to have him in your hand. And with that, we've gone through every card in the Winter Soldier Hero Pack. Let me know your thoughts. How would you have ranked things differently? Again, discussion around kind of how cards are used, where they might be useful is a bit more interesting to me than the exact ranking, but of course, feel free to let your thoughts be heard. And yeah, hope you like this video, talking about cards from a power level perspective. Going on vacation here a bit, we got 4th of July, so I'll do my Falcon Hero Pack review shortly, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to see some of these cards in action, in particular the Winter Soldier Hero, you can go check out a gameplay video I recently had of Winter Soldier taking on Zola on heroic difficulty. It was quite a satisfying match with all these minion-centric cards and a very minion-heavy scenario. So go check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.